The fluorescent lights of the Manhattan office building hummed their familiar tune as Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in late October, and the 43rd floor was finally empty. He'd been working as a janitor at Pinnacle Tower for 3 years now, ever since he'd immigrated from Hong Kong with nothing but a suitcase and dreams that seemed increasingly distant. Marcus methodically worked through his routine, emptying trash bins, wiping down desks, vacuuming the plush carpets that probably cost more than his entire year's salary. The autumn wind rattled the floor-to-ceiling windows, and he could see the glittering tapestry of New York City spread out below him. Sometimes he wondered what it felt like to work in these offices during the day, to wear those expensive suits, to make decisions that moved millions of dollars with a signature. He was cleaning the executive conference room when he noticed it, a brown leather wallet, partially hidden beneath one of the high-backed chairs. Marcus picked it up, feeling its weight. The leather was buttery soft, the kind that spoke of quality and expense. He opened it carefully, looking for identification. His breath caught. Inside were several credit cards bearing the name James Whitmore, a driver's license, and what looked like several $1,000s in crisp $100 bills. But it was the business card that made Marcus's hands tremble slightly. James Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. Marcus knew that name. Everyone in the building knew that name. Whitmore Industries occupied the top 15 floors of Pinnacle Tower. James Whitmore was one of those billionaires whose face appeared in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, a tech mogul who'd built an empire from a college dorm room 20 years ago. Marcus stood there for a long moment, the wallet heavy in his hands. He thought about his daughter Lily, who was 10 years old and desperately needed braces. He thought about his wife Susan, working double shifts at the hospital as a nursing assistant. He thought about the envelope on their kitchen table marked "Final Notice" from their landlord. $3,000 sat in his hands, enough to solve their most immediate problems. His phone buzzed. A text from Susan. "Lily's teacher called. She needs glasses. Can we afford it?" Marcus closed his eyes. He'd grown up in a modest neighborhood in Kowloon, where his father had run a small electronics repair shop. His father had always said, "Integrity isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one would ever know." He tucked the wallet carefully into his uniform pocket and continued his shift. At 2:15 a.m., when he finished his rounds, Marcus took the elevator down to the security desk in the lobby. The night guard, Miguel, was reading a paperback novel. "Miguel, I found this on 43. Marcus said, placing the wallet on the desk. "It belongs to James Whitmore. Can you make sure it gets to him?" Miguel's eyes widened as he opened the wallet. "Holy Marcus, there's got to be $4,000 in here." "I know. You could have just—" Miguel stopped himself, looking at Marcus with newfound respect. "You're a good man, Marcus." "Just the right thing," Marcus said with a tired smile. "See you tomorrow night." The October air was cold as Marcus walked to the subway station. His thin jacket did little against the wind that tunneled between the skyscrapers. He descended into the underground, joining the sparse crowd of late-night workers heading home to the outer boroughs. The train rattled through the darkness, and Marcus watched his reflection in the window, wondering if he'd just made the right decision or the stupidest one of his life. He reached their small apartment in Queens at 3:30 a.m. Susan was asleep on the couch, still in her scrubs, having collapsed after her shift. Marcus gently draped a blanket over her and kissed her forehead. He checked on Lily, who was sleeping peacefully, her textbook still spread across her desk. She'd been studying late again. In the bathroom, washing the night's grime from his hands, Marcus looked at himself in the mirror. There were more grey hairs than he remembered, more lines around his eyes. He was 38 but felt much older. Still, his reflection showed a man who could look himself in the eye. His father would have been proud. Marcus set his alarm for 8 a.m. Susan had a day shift tomorrow, and he'd promised to take Lily to school. 4 hours of sleep would have to be enough. As he lay in bed next to his wife, listening to the sounds of the city that never quite slept, Marcus thought about the wallet, about James Whitmore, and about the strange paths life took. He had no way of knowing that his simple act of honesty was about to change everything. Sometimes the universe noticed when you did the right thing. Sometimes it didn't. Marcus had returned the wallet because it was the right thing to do, not because he expected anything in return, but the universe on this particular night was paying attention. Outside, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the eastern sky. Another day in New York City was beginning, full of possibility and challenge, of dreams deferred and hopes renewed. And somewhere in a penthouse suite overlooking Central Park, James Whitmore would soon discover that his wallet had been found, and would want to know exactly who had found it. James Whitmore's day began the way it always did, at 5:30 a.m. with a workout in his private gym, followed by a scan of overnight market reports from Asia and Europe. At 52, he maintained the discipline that had built his empire, the same relentless focus that had turned a simple cloud storage idea into a multi-billion-dollar technology conglomerate. He was reviewing quarterly projections when his phone rang. The caller ID showed building security. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Miguel from Night Security. We have your wallet here at the front desk. It was found last night." James's hand instinctively went to his jacket pocket. Empty. He'd been so caught up in an emergency board meeting yesterday that he must have left it in the conference room. "I'll send someone to pick it up." "Sir, you might want to know, there's cash in it. A lot of cash." The janitor who found it turned it in completely intact. James paused. In his world, cynicism was a survival skill. He'd learned long ago that most people had a price, that loyalty could be bought, that integrity was often just a word people used until a better offer came along. "Everything's there." "Everything, sir. I checked it myself when he brought it in around 2:15 this morning." After the call ended, James sat back in his chair, staring at the Manhattan skyline through his floor-to-ceiling windows. The morning sun was painting the buildings gold and orange. He thought about the wallet, about the $4,000 he'd withdrawn for a charity auction he'd ultimately missed, about how easy it would have been for someone to pocket it and disappear. "Rebecca," he said, pressing the intercom. His executive assistant answered immediately. She was always at her desk by 6 a.m. "I need you to find out who the night janitor is on the 43rd floor, the one who worked last night." "Right away, Mr. Whitmore." 20 minutes later, Rebecca entered his office with a tablet. "His name is Marcus Chen, 38 years old, originally from Hong Kong. He's been with the building's cleaning contractor for 3 years. Excellent work record, never missed a shift. Married with 1 daughter. James took the tablet, studying the employee photo. Marcus looked tired in the picture, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet dignity. "Get me his personnel file. I want to know more about him." By noon, James had a complete picture. Marcus Chen had emigrated 6 years ago on a skilled worker visa, working initially as an electronics technician before the company he worked for went bankrupt. He'd taken the janitorial job to stay in the country and support his family. His wife worked at Mount Sinai Hospital. Their daughter attended public school in Queens and was apparently an honor student. James made a decision. "Rebecca, I want to meet him. Set it up for tonight after his shift starts and keep it quiet." "Sir, is this about the wallet?" "Among other things." That evening at 10 p.m., James did something he hadn't done in years. He stayed in the office late, waiting. Not for a meeting with investors or a conference call with overseas partners, but to meet a janitor who'd done something that, in James's experience, was becoming increasingly rare. The right thing, with no expectation of reward. He watched from his office window as the cleaning crews arrived, their supervisor distributing assignments. James had built his fortune on reading people, on identifying talent and potential where others saw only resumes and job titles. Tonight, he was curious to meet the man who'd returned $4,000 when he clearly needed it. At 11:30 p.m., James took the elevator down to the 43rd floor. The hallways were quiet, lit by the after-hours lighting that saved energy. He found Marcus in the same conference room where he'd left his wallet, methodically cleaning the windows. "Mr. Chen?" Marcus turned, startled. His eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Whitmore, sir." He immediately looked uncomfortable, probably wondering if he'd done something wrong. "Relax, Marcus. I'm not here to complain about the cleaning." James smiled, trying to put the man at ease. "I'm here about my wallet." "Oh, I'm glad it got back to you, sir. Miguel told me you found it around midnight and turned it in immediately. It had your identification. I knew who it belonged to." James studied him carefully. There was quite a bit of cash in it. Marcus met his eyes steadily. "Yes, sir, I saw that. You didn't think about keeping it, even temporarily." Marcus hesitated, then spoke with quiet honesty. "I thought about it. For maybe 30 seconds. My family could use that money, but it wasn't mine. Taking it would have been stealing, no matter how much I might need it." The simple directness of the answer struck James. No self-righteousness, no playing up his virtue, just a straightforward acknowledgement of having been tempted and choosing otherwise. "Tell me about yourself, Marcus. How did you end up working here?" For the next 20 minutes, James listened to Marcus's story. The move from Hong Kong, the bankruptcy of his previous employer, the struggle to keep his family afloat in one of the world's most expensive cities. Marcus spoke without bitterness or self-pity, just stating facts. "Why stay in New York?" James asked. "The cost of living must be brutal on a janitor's salary." "My daughter, she's thriving here. Good schools. Opportunities I never had. My wife and I, we can struggle a bit longer if it means Lily has a better future." James nodded slowly. He saw something in Marcus that he rarely encountered anymore. Someone who understood the value of sacrifice, who measured wealth not in dollars, but in the futures they were building for the next generation. "Marcus, I'd like to propose something, but first I need you to answer one question honestly. If you could do any job, what would it be?" Marcus looked confused, but answered, "I was an electronics technician in Hong Kong. I loved fixing things, understanding how they worked, but those jobs here require certifications I can't afford to get." James smiled. The universe, he thought, had just confirmed his instinct. "Come to my office tomorrow at 6 p.m. Wear what you normally wear. We have things to discuss." Marcus barely slept that night. After James Whitmore left, he'd finished his shift in a daze, his mind spinning with possibilities and anxieties. What could a billionaire possibly want to discuss with him? Had he somehow offended Whitmore by returning the wallet? Was this about something else entirely? Susan noticed his distraction over breakfast. "You've been staring at that coffee cup for 5 minutes, she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Lily had already left for school, leaving them with a rare moment of quiet. "James Whitmore wants to meet with me today." Susan's eyes widened. "The James Whitmore? Why?" Marcus explained about the wallet, about the unexpected encounter the night before. Susan listened, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Marcus, what do you think he wants?" "I don't know. Maybe to say thank you? Maybe to offer a reward? I don't know if I should take money if he offers it." "We need money," Susan said gently but firmly. "Lily needs glasses. We're behind on rent. If a billionaire wants to give you a reward for being honest, there's no shame in accepting it." Marcus knew she was right, but something felt off. The way Whitmore had looked at him, the questions about his background, it felt like more than just a thank you meeting. At 5:45 p.m., Marcus stood in the lobby of Pinnacle Tower, wearing his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt Susan had ironed for him. Miguel, on day shift now, gave him an encouraging nod as he headed to the elevator. His hands were sweating. The elevator ride to the 61st floor felt eternal. When the doors opened, he stepped into a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. Modern art on the walls, furniture that was probably worth more than his car. Rebecca, the executive assistant, greeted him with a professional smile. "Mr. Chen, Mr. Whitmore is expecting you. Please follow me." James's office was massive, with windows overlooking the city that Marcus cleaned every night, but had never seen from this perspective. The CEO stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, and turned when Marcus entered. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please, sit." James gestured to a leather sofa in the informal seating area, not the intimidating desk setup. He sat across from Marcus in a matching chair. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be good, thank you." After Rebecca brought drinks and left, James leaned forward, his expression serious but not unkind. "Marcus, I spent most of today thinking about our conversation last night, about you, your background, your situation. I want to make you an offer, but I need you to hear me out completely before you respond. Can you do that?" Marcus nodded, his heart pounding. "I built Whitmore Industries from nothing," James began. 20 years ago, I was working on servers in a college dorm room, eating ramen, maxing out credit cards. I succeeded partly because I was smart, partly because I was lucky, but mostly because people took chances on me when they didn't have to. My first investor, Dr. Patricia Hughes, gave me $50,000 when I had nothing but an idea and conviction. She told me she wasn't investing in my business plan. She was investing in my character. He paused, taking a sip of water. "Last night you returned my wallet with $4,000 in it. I've done some research, Marcus. I know what you make. I know about your daughter's needs, your wife's double shifts, your rent situation. That money could have solved immediate problems for you. But you returned it anyway." Marcus felt his face flush. "Sir, I was just—" "Let me finish," James said gently. "In my world, I'm surrounded by people who want something from me. Business partners who smile while planning to undercut me. Employees who work hard because they're climbing a ladder. Politicians who court me for donations. Everyone has an angle. But you had $4,000 in your hands, and your only angle was doing the right thing." James stood and walked to his desk, returning with a folder. "I want to hire you, Marcus, not as a janitor, as a technician in our hardware division. We design and manufacture components for data centers. Your experience in electronics, your work ethic, your integrity, these are exactly what I need in my company." Marcus stared at him, unable to process the words. "Sir, I don't have the certifications. The American qualifications, I'll pay for them. You'll spend 3 months in accelerated training, full salary, learning our systems and getting certified. After that, you join the team full-time. Starting salary is $75,000 with benefits, full health coverage, education stipend for Lily, retirement matching." The number hit Marcus like a physical force. 75,000, more than triple what he made now. Enough to move out of their cramped apartment, to get Susan to part-time instead of killing herself with double shifts, to give Lily everything she needed. "Why?" Marcus's voice came out hoarse. "Why me? You could hire any technician you want." James sat back down, his expression thoughtful. "Because I've learned something in 20 years of building this company. Technical skills can be taught, but character can't. You can train someone to fix a server, but you can't train them to be the person who returns a wallet full of cash when no one's watching. I need people I can trust, Marcus. People who do the right thing not because someone's watching, but because it's who they are." Marcus felt his eyes burning. He thought of his father, of those lessons about integrity in the small repair shop in Kowloon. He thought of Susan, of Lily, of all the nights he'd wondered if leaving Hong Kong had been a mistake. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. This is a big change. Talk to your wife, take tonight." "But Marcus," James extended his hand, "I hope you say yes. I think you could do great things at Whitmore Industries." Marcus shook his hand, feeling the calluses from his janitorial work against the smooth palm of the billionaire. Two different worlds, touching for a moment. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow." As Marcus left the office, his mind was reeling. In the elevator, he caught his reflection in the polished brass doors and barely recognized himself. Was this really happening? Could one act of simple honesty really change everything? His phone buzzed. Susan. "How did it go?" Marcus smiled, tears finally spilling over. "I need to tell you in person. I'm coming home." Marcus walked through Queens in the gathering dusk, too wired to take the subway. He needed to move, to think, to process what had just happened. The November air was crisp, carrying the smell of street food from the vendors packing up for the evening. Neon signs flickered to life as businesses transitioned from day to night operations. $75,000. The number kept repeating in his mind like a mantra. He'd been making $28,000 as a janitor. The math was almost incomprehensible. They could actually save money, build something for the future, stop living on the knife's edge where every unexpected expense became a crisis. But as he walked, other thoughts crept in. What if he wasn't good enough? He'd been out of technical work for years. Technology had evolved. What if Whitmore was making a mistake, seeing something in Marcus that wasn't really there? What if he failed and embarrassed himself, proving that he was just a janitor after all? By the time he reached their apartment building, a pre-war walk-up with a temperamental elevator, it was fully dark. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs, his legs protesting after the long walk. The familiar sounds of the building surrounded him. Televisions murmuring in Spanish and Mandarin, a baby crying, someone playing salsa music. Susan was at the kitchen table helping Lily with homework when he entered. Both looked up, their faces anxious. "Dad!" Lily jumped up and hugged him. "Mom said you had an important meeting with Mr. Whitmore." Marcus hugged her back, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I did, sweet pea. Can you give me a few minutes to talk to Mom?" Lily nodded and retreated to her room, though Marcus suspected she'd be trying to listen through the thin walls. Susan stood, searching his face. "Well," Marcus sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the same scarred table they'd bought at a thrift store when they first moved to America. "He offered me a job. A better cleaning position? No, a job as a technician, in his company. $75,000 a year. Susan sat down slowly, her mouth opening but no sound coming out. Finally, "Marcus, that's incredible. That's more than we make combined." "I know." She studied him, her nurse's intuition reading the conflict in his expression. "So why do you look terrified?" Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "What if I'm not good enough? It's been 6 years since I worked in electronics. Everything has changed. What if he's making a mistake? What if I fail?" Susan reached across the table and took his hands. Her fingers were rough from constant hand-washing at the hospital, but her grip was strong. "Marcus Chen, listen to me. You were the best technician at your company in Hong Kong. You trained other people. You have that gift. You understand how things work, how to fix them. That doesn't go away. But no buts. You think you're not good enough because you've spent 3 years cleaning toilets and emptying trash. But you know what I see? I see a man who learned every single system in that building. You know which copiers are temperamental, which HVAC units need servicing, which electrical panels are outdated. You've been learning the whole time, Marcus. You just didn't realize it." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "What if we get comfortable with that salary, and then I lose the job? Then we'll deal with it, together, like we always have." Susan squeezed his hands. "But Marcus, we can't live our whole lives afraid of failing. Lily is watching us. She's watching how we respond to opportunity. What do we want to teach her? To play it safe or to be brave?" The bedroom door creaked open and Lily emerged, not even pretending she hadn't been listening. "I think you should take the job, Dad." "Oh, really?" Marcus smiled despite his anxiety. "And why's that?" "Because you're always happy when you fix things. Remember when you fixed Mrs. Rodriguez's radio? Or when you got the building security system working again? You get this look, like you're solving a puzzle. You don't get that look pushing a mop cart." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. When had his daughter become so wise? "And besides," Lily continued, climbing into his lap even though she was really too big for it now, "Mr. Whitmore is really smart, right? A billionaire. So if he thinks you're good enough, maybe you should believe him." Susan laughed, wiping her own eyes. "She's got a point." Marcus held his daughter, feeling the weight of her trust, her belief in him. He thought about his father again, about the conversation they'd had before Marcus left Hong Kong. His father had been sick, the cancer that would take him 8 months later already in his body, though they hadn't known it yet. "Marcus," his father had said, "I taught you to fix electronics because it's a good skill, but the real lesson was about seeing potential in broken things. Nothing is truly broken if you understand how it's supposed to work. That includes people, including yourself. Marcus made his decision. Okay, I'll do it. Susan whooped, and Lily squealed with excitement. They held each other, this family of three who'd crossed an ocean together, who'd survived on hope and hard work, who were about to embark on something entirely new. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus and Susan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling with its water stain that looked like a dragon. "Are you scared?" Susan whispered, terrified. "Good. That means it matters." She turned on her side, facing him in the darkness. "But you know what? For the first time in 6 years, I'm not worried about how we'll pay next month's rent. That's worth being scared for." Marcus pulled her close. "Thank you for believing in me even when I don't. Always. That's the deal." Outside, the city hummed its endless song, and somewhere in a penthouse office, James Whitmore was reviewing reports, confident that his instinct about Marcus Chen would prove correct. Sometimes the best investments weren't in technology or markets, they were in people who just needed a chance. Tomorrow, Marcus would call with his answer, but tonight, he let himself imagine a different future, one where possibility wasn't just a word, but a real tangible thing. Marcus's first day at Whitmore Industries began with an overwhelming sense of not belonging. The lobby of the tech campus in Brooklyn, a converted warehouse with exposed brick and modern glass installations, buzzed with young professionals in casual but expensive clothing. Everyone seemed to move with purpose, speaking in rapid-fire conversations about code, servers, and systems Marcus only vaguely understood. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt that Susan had insisted on buying. "You need to look the part," she'd said, and clutched a new backpack containing notebooks and the employee orientation packet. At 43 years old, he felt ancient among the 20-somethings streaming through security. Marcus Chen, a woman in her early 30s, approached, extending her hand. She had short purple hair and wore a T-shirt that said, "I void warranties," under a blazer. "I'm Diana Torres, head of the training program. Welcome to Whitmore Industries." "Thank you, I'm, ready to learn." Diana smiled warmly. "Don't be nervous. We get it. You're transitioning from a different field. That's actually why James created this accelerated program. Some of our best technicians came from unexpected backgrounds." She led him through a workspace that looked nothing like any office Marcus had seen. No cubicles, just open areas with standing desks, comfortable seating clusters, and glass-walled meeting rooms. There was a coffee bar that looked like a cafe, a game room with a pool table, and what appeared to be a meditation space. "This is the hardware division," Diana explained. "We design and test components here, then manufacture them at our facility in New Jersey. You'll spend 3 months learning our systems, getting certified, and working alongside our senior technicians. No pressure to perform. This is pure learning time." The training room held 5 other people, ranging in age from early 20s to late 40s. Diana introduced him around. Jake, a former Marine. Priya, who'd been a teacher. Carlos, straight out of community college. Angela, a career changer from banking, and Robert, who'd worked in auto mechanics. "See," Diana said, "diverse backgrounds. That's intentional. Different perspectives make us better." The morning was a whirlwind of orientation, company values, safety protocols, an introduction to Whitmore's technology ecosystem. Marcus took notes frantically, trying to absorb everything. They broke for lunch at the company cafeteria, which served food that would have cost $20 a plate in a restaurant, completely free. "This is insane," Marcus said to Robert as they sat with their trays. "Free gourmet food?" Robert, who had a salt and pepper beard and laugh lines around his eyes, chuckled. "Wait until you see the other benefits. This place takes care of people. It's why turnover is so low." "How did you end up here?" Marcus asked. "Fixed James's Tesla when it broke down outside my shop. Spent an hour talking to him while I worked. Next thing I know, he's offering me a job. That was 2 years ago." Robert took a bite of his salmon. Let me give you some advice. Don't try to be the smartest person in the room. Just be curious, ask questions, and be honest when you don't understand something. That's what they value here. The afternoon brought their first technical session. An instructor named Paul, who looked about 25 but spoke with the confidence of someone who'd lived 3 lifetimes, walked them through the basics of Whitmore's server architecture. Marcus found himself leaning forward, his old passion reigniting. The technology had evolved, but the fundamental principles remained the same: electrical pathways, data flow, problem-solving logic. It was like meeting an old friend who'd gotten a dramatic haircut. "You look happy," Diana observed during a break. "I forgot how much I loved this," Marcus admitted. "Understanding how things connect, why they work or don't work. It's like solving a puzzle." That's exactly what James saw in you," Diana said. "Technical skills matter, but that curiosity, that passion, you can't teach that." By the end of the day, Marcus's head was spinning, but it was the good kind of overwhelming. He'd been given a laptop, access credentials, and a stack of reading materials. As he prepared to leave, Diana handed him a card. "This is my direct number. You'll have questions outside of class. That's normal. Call or text any time, really. We want you to succeed, Marcus." On the subway home, Marcus reviewed his notes, already thinking about the questions he'd ask tomorrow. The car was crowded with evening commuters, but he barely noticed. His mind was alive in a way it hadn't been in years. Susan was waiting when he got home, Lily doing homework at the kitchen table. "Well, how was it?" Marcus set down his backpack and pulled them both into a hug. "It was terrifying and exciting, and I think I'm going to love it." Over dinner, take-out Chinese food, a small celebration, Marcus told them everything. Lily asked a million questions about the technology, her eyes bright with interest. Susan kept squeezing his hand, her smile wider than he'd seen in years. "Dad," Lily said during a lull in conversation, "does this mean we can get a better apartment?" Marcus and Susan exchanged glances. They'd been talking about this, doing careful math with the new salary. "We think so, sweet pea. Maybe in a few months, once we're sure everything is stable. Would you like that? Could I have my own room?" The question hit Marcus hard. She'd never complained about sharing a tiny bedroom with them, about the lack of privacy, about having to do homework at the kitchen table. "Yes," he said, his voice thick, "you can have your own room." That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, working through the first assignment, a technical manual about server cooling systems. Susan came up behind him and massaged his shoulders. "You know what I realized today?" she said. "What?" "You finally look like yourself again, not the tired version who's been pushing through. The real Marcus, the one I fell in love with in Hong Kong." Marcus saved his work and turned to look at her. "I didn't realize how lost I'd felt until I found my way back. That's what happens when you're just surviving instead of living." She kissed the top of his head. "Now you get to do both." As Marcus returned to his studies, he felt something he hadn't felt in 6 years. Hope that wasn't tinged with desperation. Genuine, solid hope built on opportunity and his own capability. He was 43 years old and starting over, but he wasn't starting from zero. He was starting from exactly where he needed to be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new moments of doubt. But tonight, in their small apartment in Queens, Marcus Chen allowed himself to believe that returning a lost wallet had been the best decision of his life. The honeymoon period lasted exactly 3 weeks. By week 4 of training, Marcus hit a wall that felt insurmountable. The problem was cloud integration protocols, the complex systems that allowed Whitmore's hardware to communicate with various software platforms. While his classmates, particularly Jake and Priya, seemed to grasp the concepts quickly, Marcus found himself reading the same paragraphs over and over, the information sliding off his brain like water off glass. It was late January now, and New York was locked in a bitter cold snap. Marcus sat in the training room after hours, the Brooklyn campus nearly empty, staring at his laptop screen with mounting frustration. His certification exam was in 2 weeks, and this module represented 30% of the test. Still here, Paul, the instructor, poked his head into the room. "Marcus, it's almost 8. I know, I'm not getting this." Marcus gestured at his screen. "Everyone else understood it this afternoon. I'm holding the class back." Paul pulled up a chair, his usual enthusiastic demeanor shifting to something more serious. "You're not holding anyone back. Everyone learns differently. What specifically is tripping you up?" Marcus tried to explain, but even articulating the problem was difficult. It was like trying to describe a color he couldn't see. Paul listened patiently, then nodded. "Okay, I think I see the issue. You're trying to understand it conceptually, like hardware, physical connections, tangible components. But cloud systems don't work that way. They're abstract, fluid. You need to think of them differently." "How?" Paul thought for a moment. "You cleaned office buildings, right? Think of cloud integration like this. The hardware is the building, solid and fixed. The cloud is the people moving through it. They come and go, use different rooms, need different things at different times. Integration protocols are like the building's systems, elevators, HVAC, security, that adapt to whoever's there. They're not fixed connections, they're responsive relationships." Something clicked. Marcus felt a mental door open. "So instead of thinking about A connecting to B, I should think about A responding to what B needs." "Exactly. It's not a pipeline. It's a conversation." Marcus spent the next 2 hours working through the problems with this new framework. Paul stayed with him, answering questions, offering different analogies. By the time they left, Paul giving him a ride to the subway since it was late, Marcus felt like he'd climbed over a significant hurdle, but the relief was short-lived. The next week brought a practical lab where they had to diagnose and repair a server with multiple issues. Marcus's team, himself, Angela and Carlos, struggled while other teams finished in half the time. "Maybe check the power supply," Angela suggested, but Marcus had already tested that. "Could be a software issue," Carlos offered. Marcus stared at the machine, feeling the old confidence he'd had in Hong Kong slipping away. He was supposed to be good at this. Fixing things was his gift. But this server sat there, stubbornly dysfunctional, mocking his inability to solve it. Diana appeared beside them. "How's it going?" "Not great," Marcus admitted. "We've checked everything we can think of. Walk me through your diagnostic process." As Marcus explained their steps, Diana listened carefully. When he finished, she asked, "What are you assuming about the problem?" "That it's a single point of failure, one component that's broken. And what if it's not? What if multiple small issues are compounding?" Marcus looked at the server with fresh eyes. They'd been looking for the big problem, ignoring small anomalies that seemed unrelated. He started testing connections they'd dismissed as functional, finding micro-failures in 3 different systems that together created a cascade failure. 30 minutes later, the server hummed to life. "Good work," Diana said. "And that's your lesson for today. Sometimes the problem isn't one big thing. It's many small things you've overlooked because you're hunting for a monster." That evening, Marcus called his father's old friend, Uncle Wei, who still ran an electronics shop in Kowloon. They talked for an hour, Wei reminding Marcus of lessons from years ago, encouraging him when the self-doubt got too loud. "Your father used to say you had the sight," Wei said in Cantonese. "You could look at a circuit board and see where the problem lived. That doesn't disappear, Marcus. You're just learning to see new kinds of circuits." The encouragement helped, but the stress was taking its toll. Susan noticed he was sleeping poorly, watching him wake at 3 a.m. to review notes. Lily saw him snap with frustration over small things, something he never did. "Dad," she said one Saturday morning while they made breakfast together, "are you okay?" Marcus cracked an egg, watching it sizzle in the pan. "I'm fine, sweet pea. Just working hard. You seem sad. Is the new job bad?" He looked at his daughter, seeing genuine worry in her eyes, and felt a wave of shame. "No, honey. The job is good. I'm just learning a lot. It's hard sometimes, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Do you want to quit?" No, the answer came immediately and surprised him with its vehemence. Despite the struggle, despite the self-doubt, he didn't want to quit. No, I love what I'm learning. It's just challenging. Mom always says the hard stuff is worth doing. Your mom is very smart. That afternoon, Marcus made a decision. He'd been trying to do this alone, too proud or embarrassed to ask for extra help. He emailed Diana requesting additional tutoring sessions. Within an hour, she responded, setting up 3 one-on-one sessions per week with senior technicians. The help made a difference. Slowly, painfully, the concepts began to solidify. Marcus studied harder than he'd studied for anything in his life, often falling asleep with his laptop still open, Susan gently closing it and draping a blanket over him. The night before his certification exam, Susan found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes and empty coffee cups. She sat down across from him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you," she said. "I might fail. You might, and if you do, you'll try again. But Marcus, you've already succeeded. You took the chance. You're doing something you love. That's not nothing." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm terrified. I know, but you're brave too. Those aren't opposites." The next morning, Marcus walked into the testing center with sweaty palms and a head full of information he prayed he could access. The exam was 3 hours of technical questions, practical scenarios, and problem-solving challenges. When it was over, he walked out into the winter afternoon, exhausted and uncertain. Results would come in 5 business days. Until then, all he could do was wait and hope that his best had been good enough. Marcus didn't pass his certification exam. The email arrived on a grey February morning while he was on the subway heading to the Brooklyn campus. Certification assessment results. Additional preparation required. He sat in the crowded train car, staring at his phone screen, feeling his carefully constructed confidence crumble. The email was professional, encouraging even. He'd scored 68% when 75 was passing, strong in practical diagnostics, but weak in theoretical cloud architecture. He could retake the exam in 4 weeks. But all Marcus could see was the word failed. By the time he reached the campus, he'd convinced himself that this was it. The proof that he didn't belong, that James Whitmore had made a mistake. He was just a janitor playing dress-up in a world he had no business being in. Diana was waiting when he arrived. "I saw your results. Can we talk?" They sat in one of the glass-walled conference rooms overlooking the East River. The February morning was cold and bright, sunlight glinting off the water. "I'm sorry," Marcus said before she could speak. "I let you down. I let Mr. Whitmore down. I understand if—" "Marcus, stop." Diana's voice was firm but kind. "You didn't fail. You scored 68% on your first attempt at a challenging certification. Do you know what the average first-time score is? 62%. You're above average. But I didn't pass." "No, you didn't. And now you know exactly what you need to work on. The theoretical cloud architecture section, we can address that. You've got 4 weeks, and you'll have dedicated tutoring." Marcus shook his head. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe Mr. Whitmore saw something that isn't really there." Diana leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about James. He's been wrong about many things in his career. Investments that failed, products that flopped, partnerships that went south. But he's rarely wrong about people. You know why? Because he doesn't hire people for what they already know. He hires them for how they respond when things get hard. I'm responding by wanting to quit. You're responding by being human. But here's the thing. You haven't quit. You came in today. You're sitting here talking to me. That's not quitting, Marcus. That's showing up even when it's hard." The words settled over him like a blanket, not quite warm enough to dispel the cold of disappointment, but enough to stop the shivering. Over the next few days, Marcus moved through his training in a fog. His classmates, all of whom had passed their certifications, were moving into the next phase, actual work assignments. He remained in training, feeling left behind. Jake, the former Marine, caught up with him at lunch. "Heard you're retaking the exam. Want some help? I'm pretty solid on cloud architecture." The offer felt like pity. "I don't want to take up your time." "Chen, in the Marines, we had a saying, nobody gets left behind. We succeed as a team, or we don't succeed at all." Jake grinned. "Besides, teaching someone else is the best way to really master something yourself. You'd be doing me a favor." Reluctantly, Marcus accepted. Jake proved to be an excellent teacher, breaking down concepts into military metaphors that somehow made everything clearer. "Cloud architecture is like supply chains," he explained. "You don't control the terrain, but you control how resources move through it." Priya joined their study sessions, then Robert. Soon Marcus had an entire support system of people who'd already passed, helping him prepare. Their generosity humbled him and also confused him. "Why are you all helping me?" he asked during one session. Robert laughed. "Because that's the culture here, man. Whitmore doesn't just talk about teamwork. He built a company where people actually care about each other's success. When I was struggling with coding last year, 5 people jumped in to help. It's just how we do things." The retake exam was scheduled for mid-March. This time, Marcus didn't study alone until 3 a.m. He worked with his study group, asked questions without shame, and took regular breaks to prevent burnout. Susan noticed the change. "You seem better," she said one evening. "Less desperate." "I learned something," Marcus said. "I was treating this like I had to prove I deserved to be here, but maybe I just need to learn and grow. Those aren't the same thing." The night before his retake exam, James Whitmore appeared at the training center. Marcus was reviewing notes when he heard a knock on the glass door. "Mr. Whitmore, sir, I didn't expect—" "I heard you're retaking your certification tomorrow." James walked in, hands in his pockets, looking more casual than Marcus had ever seen him. "Wanted to see how you're feeling." "Nervous, but more prepared than last time." James nodded. "Good. Marcus, I want to tell you something. I've been in business for 20 years. I've started companies, sold companies, hired thousands of people. And I've learned that success isn't about never falling down. It's about what you do after you hit the ground. I failed the first time." "No, you didn't. You took your first attempt and scored well enough to know you're capable. Now you're taking what you learned and trying again. That's not failure, that's growth. Failure would be walking away." James moved to the window, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline. "You know what made me want to hire you? Not just that you returned my wallet. It's that you did it when you clearly needed the money. You made the hard choice. That's the same quality I'm seeing now. You're staying when walking away would be easier. What if I don't pass tomorrow? Then you try a third time, and I'll support you every attempt until you do. Because I don't invest in sure things, Marcus. I invest in people who are worth betting on." After James left, Marcus sat in the quiet training room for a long time. Through the windows, he could see the lights of Manhattan across the river, millions of people living their lives, facing their own challenges. He thought about his father, about the wallet, about the strange path that had led him here. He thought about what it meant to be worth betting on. Tomorrow he'd take that test again, and whatever happened, he'd keep moving forward, because that's what you did when someone believed in you. You tried to live up to that belief. Marcus passed his certification exam with an 82%. The email arrived while he was eating lunch with his study group, and when he saw the subject line, "Certification Assessment Results, Passed," he let out a whoop that turned heads across the cafeteria. Jake high-fived him so hard his hand stung. Priya hugged him. Robert ordered a round of expensive coffees from the cafe to celebrate. Diana appeared 10 minutes later with a small cake that said, "Certified," in blue frosting. "I knew you'd do it," she said, grinning. "Now the real work begins." She was right. The following Monday, Marcus received his first assignment, joining a team troubleshooting power efficiency issues in Whitmore's newest server design. The team lead, a woman named Jennifer Park, who looked no older than 30 but had senior systems engineer on her badge, welcomed him aboard. "Fresh perspective is exactly what we need," Jennifer said during their first meeting. "We've been staring at this problem for weeks. Sometimes you need new eyes." The server in question was designed for data centers, processing enormous amounts of information while supposedly using 40% less power than competitors. In testing, it was hitting those numbers, but only intermittently. Sometimes it ran hot, consuming more power than it should, with no clear pattern. Marcus spent his first week observing, learning the team's dynamics, and studying every spec of the server design. The team had 6 members: Jennifer, David, a hardware specialist, Keisha, a software engineer, Tom and Lisa, both veteran technicians, and now Marcus. They tested everything: circuit boards, cooling systems, power supplies. Everything checked out individually, but together, something went wrong unpredictably. On Friday afternoon, Marcus was reviewing temperature logs when something caught his attention. "The heat spikes," he said, mostly to himself. "They're not random." Jennifer looked up from her workstation. "What do you mean?" I think there's a pattern. Look, every spike happens when the server transitions from low load to high load. Not during sustained high use, just during the transition." David rolled over in his chair. "We checked the transition protocols. They're clean." "I know. But what if it's not the protocols? What if it's something physical happening during the transition? A mechanical issue we're treating like a software problem." The team exchanged glances. It was a fresh angle, but also one that challenged weeks of their work. Marcus felt his confidence waver. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he was overstepping. Jennifer, however, leaned forward with interest. "Explain." Marcus grabbed a whiteboard marker, grateful for his habit of thinking visually. "Okay, when you're cleaning an office building," several team members smiled at the analogy, "you learn that some problems only show up during transitions. A door that works fine when it's open or closed, but sticks when you're opening it. The issue isn't the open state or closed state, it's the movement between them." He drew a simple diagram. "What if something mechanical, a connector, a circuit contact, is briefly failing during the load transition? It works fine under steady state because the physical connection is either solidly engaged or not engaged at all. But during transition, there's physical movement or vibration that causes intermittent contact." Keisha sat up straighter. "The mounting brackets. We switched to a lighter design 2 months ago for cost savings." "Ah, and that's when the intermittent issues started," Tom added, checking his notes. "We thought it was coincidental." Jennifer was already pulling up CAD drawings of the server chassis. "If the lighter brackets allow micro-vibrations during load transitions, and if those vibrations affect physical connections," the team dove in. For the next 3 hours, they disassembled a test unit, examining every connection under different load scenarios. Marcus's hands, experienced from years of detailed electronics work, proved invaluable. He could feel things, subtle vibrations, minute shifts that instruments couldn't quite capture. Finally, Lisa shouted from across the lab, "Got it! The main power connector has 0.003 inches of play. Under transition vibration, it's making intermittent contact for maybe half a second. Half a second of interruption causes the system to switch to backup power routing," David said, his face lighting up. "Which is less efficient. That's our heat spike." "And why it's unpredictable," Jennifer added. "It depends on the specific vibration frequency of each load transition, which varies." They'd found it. A simple mechanical issue masquerading as a complex software problem. The solution was equally simple: reinforced mounting and tighter tolerances on the power connector. Jennifer turned to Marcus, her expression a mix of respect and gratitude. "That was brilliant thinking. We'd have been chasing software ghosts for another month. I saw a pattern." "You saw what we couldn't see because you thought differently. That's exactly why diversity of background matters. We were all thinking like engineers. You thought like someone who understands physical systems." The fix was implemented within a week. The servers ran perfectly, hitting their efficiency targets consistently. Jennifer wrote a report crediting Marcus's diagnostic insight, and suddenly people across the division knew his name. James Whitmore sent him a personal email. "Heard about the server fix. This is exactly why I hired you. Great work, Marcus." That weekend, Marcus took his family to dinner at a real restaurant. Not fancy, but not takeout either. A neighborhood Italian place in Queens with red check tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. "To Dad," Lily said, raising her glass of Sprite, "the smartest technician at Whitmore Industries." "I don't know about smartest," Marcus protested. "To Marcus," Susan corrected, raising her wine glass, "who's finally seeing what the rest of us have always seen, that he's exactly where he belongs." Marcus clinked glasses with his family, feeling something he'd almost forgotten: pride. Not arrogant pride, but the quiet satisfaction of having proven to himself that he could do this, that the janitor from Queens with the electronics background could contribute something valuable. As they ate pasta and laughed over Lily's stories from school, Marcus caught his reflection in the restaurant window. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. Not just happier, more solid, more present, more himself. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Team drinks next Friday to celebrate the fix. You're buying the first round with your next paycheck." Marcus smiled. He'd spent 3 years invisible, cleaning offices while the real workers went home. Now he was one of them, not just present but valued, not just surviving but building something. The journey from janitor to engineer wasn't just about changing jobs. It was about reclaiming the person he'd been, the person he'd always had the potential to be. And it all started with a lost wallet and the decision to do the right thing. 8 months after finding the wallet, Marcus stood in front of a conference room on the 61st floor of Pinnacle Tower, James Whitmore's executive level. He'd been invited to present the server fix to the board of directors, explaining how a simple mechanical insight had saved the company months of development time and potentially millions in redesign costs. His hands were sweating. Public speaking had never been his strength, and speaking to billionaire board members felt surreal. But Jennifer and Diana had helped him prepare, and Susan had made him practice his presentation 5 times last night. James entered the conference room, followed by a dozen board members in expensive suits. "Everyone, this is Marcus Chen, one of our hardware technicians. Marcus joined us through an unusual path, and I thought his presentation today would illustrate why diverse hiring matters." Marcus set up his laptop, his heart pounding. Then he began to speak, walking the board through the problem, the diagnostic process, and the solution. He showed them temperature graphs, explained the mechanical issue using his building maintenance analogy, and detailed the cost savings. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then a woman Marcus recognized as Dr. Patricia Hughes, the investor who'd first funded James 20 years ago, began to clap. The rest of the board joined in. "Excellent work," Dr. Hughes said. "Simple, elegant solution. Those are always the best kind." After the meeting, James asked Marcus to stay behind. When they were alone, James walked to the windows overlooking Manhattan. "Do you remember this view, Marcus?" "Sir? You saw it every night for 3 years, from the other side while you were cleaning." Marcus joined him at the window. "I did. It looked different then." "How so?" "Like something that belonged to other people. A view for executives and decision-makers, not for guys pushing mop carts." James nodded slowly. "And now?" Marcus considered the question. Below them, the city stretched out in all directions, millions of lives, millions of stories, all intersecting in ways no one could predict. "Now it feels like I've earned the right to stand here, not because of my job title, but because I know I can contribute something." "That's exactly right." James turned to face him. "Marcus, I want to tell you why I really hired you. It wasn't just about the wallet, though that mattered. It was because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" "That character counts for more than credentials. I'd been hiring from the same schools, the same programs, getting the same kind of thinking. I'd built an echo chamber. You broke that pattern." James smiled. "And you've been breaking patterns ever since. The server fix was brilliant because you saw what engineers couldn't see. You thought like someone who'd actually worked with systems in the real world." "I almost quit after I failed that first exam." "I know. Diana told me. But you didn't. That's what matters." James reached into his jacket and pulled out a familiar brown leather wallet. I kept this, even had it repaired. The stitching was coming loose. Do you know why I keep it? Marcus shook his head. To remind myself that the most important moments often don't feel important when they're happening. You returning this wallet wasn't a grand gesture to you. It was just the right thing to do, but it changed both our lives. Mine, because I met someone who restored my faith that integrity still exists. Yours, because that simple act opened a door you didn't know existed. James handed him an envelope. This is for you. Inside was a letter, a promotion. Senior hardware technician with a salary of $95,000 and a team lead position on the next major project. Marcus's eyes widened. Mr. Whitmore, I've only been here 8 months. And in 8 months you've proven yourself. You've learned fast, contributed significantly, and shown leadership qualities. This isn't charity, Marcus. It's recognition of value delivered. That evening, Marcus stood outside Pinnacle Tower, looking up at the glass and steel structure that had been part of his life for nearly 4 years. He thought about the man he'd been when he first started cleaning these floors, hopeful but desperate, skilled but unemployed, proud but struggling. He pulled out his phone and called Susan. I have news. Good news or bad news? Very good news. I'll tell you at home. Can you make sure Lily's there? I want to tell you both together. An hour later, sitting at their kitchen table, the same scarred thrift store table, though they could afford to replace it now, Marcus told his family about the promotion. Lily jumped up and hugged him. Dad, that's amazing! Susan wiped tears from her eyes. I'm so proud of you. There's something else, Marcus said. I've been doing math. With this salary, we can do more than just get a bigger apartment. We can start really saving. For Lily's college, for maybe buying a place someday, for visiting Hong Kong so you can see where I grew up. Can we really? Lily asked, her eyes wide. We can really. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, Marcus and Susan sat on their small balcony, looking out at the Queen's neighborhood they'd called home. They could move now to a better apartment, a better area, but they weren't in a hurry. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd kept the wallet? Susan asked. Marcus considered it. Sometimes. We'd have had $4,000. It would have helped short-term, but I'd have lost something more valuable. Your integrity. No, the opportunity to become who I was meant to be. He took her hand. That wallet wasn't the end of our problems. It was the beginning of our solution, but only because I made the choice to return it. Susan leaned her head on his shoulder. Your father would be so proud. I hope so. I think about him a lot, about the lessons he taught me. Marcus looked up at the stars, barely visible through the city's light pollution. He always said that doing the right thing doesn't always pay off immediately. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it seems like it costs you. But in the long run, it's the only thing that builds a life worth living. And was he right? Marcus thought about his journey. From janitor to technician, from desperation to stability, from feeling invisible to being valued. He thought about the wallet, the interview, the training, the struggles and the triumphs. He thought about his daughter with her own room now, his wife who no longer had to work double shifts, and himself, finally doing work that fed his soul, not just his family. Yes, Marcus said, he was right. Above them, the New York City sky slowly darkened, stars emerging one by one. In living rooms across the city, other families were having their own moments, some joyful, some difficult, all part of the great tapestry of human experience. And in a penthouse across the river, James Whitmore was reviewing tomorrow's agenda, confident that his instinct about Marcus Chen had been correct. Sometimes life changed in dramatic moments, job offers, test results, promotions. But more often it changed in quiet moments of choice, to return a wallet or keep it, to try again or give up, to believe in yourself or surrender to doubt. Marcus Chen had made his choices, and those choices had made him. The janitor who found a wallet had become so much more. Not because a billionaire had rescued him, but because he'd rescued himself, One honest decision, one hard day, one small victory at a time. And that was a story worth telling. If you've made it this far, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next stories. Leave us a comment, letting us know where in the world you're watching from. Your support inspires us to keep creating content like this. Thank you for being here with us.